Welcome to the Neijiaquan podcast. My name is Isaac Kamens. This is a bi-weekly podcast where my friend Jess and I discuss internal martial arts, Qigong, and meditation. This week we continue our discussion on the 1993 article from Qi Journal about Taoist meditation. We talk about Liu Hongji's meditation some more. We talk about developing power for meditation, avoiding psychic addiction, how mental health and emotional maturity factor into doing these practices, and a few other things. And then we talk about the second swing some more. We get into more the spiraling in the upper body and how the second swing energizes the area around the liver and the spleen. And we finish up by talking about how to apply the second swing, or the swings in general, to martial arts. All right, enjoy, and thanks for listening.
Welcome back to the Neijiaquan podcast with Isaac and Jess. We're talking about Opening the Energy Gates of Your Body by B.K. Francis, and we're following the different chapters on both the history of the set as well as the training and doing of the set. The last couple episodes we've been profiling the life of Liu Hongji, and we've been digging into different articles where some of his teachings appear and some of the sort of the rest of the story about him as it exists, because he's quite a mysterious figure. There's not much about him out there. We're looking at an article from Qi Journal, 1993. Kumar Francis, an informal discussion on Taoist meditation, part 1. At some of the materials there that mention Liu Hongji. So here's another paragraph. In Taoist meditation, the initial object is to develop as much energy as possible, but not from the point of obtaining power. This is what traps people in the early stages. They become energy junkies. My teacher Leo put it very well. He said you'd be better off with an opium habit because you only need the opium. As soon as one life is over, the drug addiction is finished. But if you get addicted to psychic energy, the desire for psychic energy will endure for countless rebirths. It will not be something that you can drop with the life that has initiated this habit. It goes with you. And so that paragraph struck me because it's such a cosmic look at life as just one incarnation after another, and how a physical, something physical drops away, but a desire for psychic power continues from lifetime to lifetime. And it's talking about developing energy in Taoist meditation. That reminds me of Qigong, where you're physically developing yourself and developing your energy body. But apparently there's other levels to it. I don't know if you want to say anything on that, or...
I mean, I think for the purposes of this, that, energy gates or Qigong is the strengthening the vessel, right? So that when you actually do the practice of meditation, the physical vessel is intact and more comfortable. And it gives you the sort of the raw power for doing the meditation, right? So the power you use in meditation isn't the same kind of power that you use in martial arts. Obviously, it's more of a mental power, if you will, but it's still addictive. That people, this is the sort of the guru syndrome, right? People who sit in their room and meditate by themselves and then end up thinking that they're special because of it. And it's like, well, you didn't do anything that a million other people haven't done. You just don't have reality kicking you in the face. So, the part of it is, it's still a body practice.
So, I mean, this is the first time we've run across this in the stuff we've been looking at, this psychic level of power. But there's this in this system. There's your different energy bodies include your physical body, your energy body, your emotional body, your mental body, your psychic body that sort of expand out from inside you. And so this is where Liu Hongji is. His training's taking place on these higher energy bodies, it sounds like, that are more difficult to, it takes sustained awareness and meditation and practice to work on those type of levels.
I think it's the same practices, but that as you go through it, it's like deeper levels, right? So from a practical standpoint, you're not doing anything really different. It's just as you peel away the layers, and the longer you do it, the better you get at it, and the deeper you can go, and the quieter you can be as you go.
The next thing he says is, in the first level of Taoist meditation, one spends a long time learning to become a mature human being. My teacher Leo and I spent a long time on this. And so that sounds like before you go off to the realms of working with the psychic and the spirit, becoming a mature human being is the first task. And maybe that could be one of the hardest tasks of all, I suspect.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways that's where it shouldn't be a substitute for dealing with your emotional issues. You know, that
you're not trying to push aside your emotions and stuff.
If you have mental health issues, you shouldn't look at this stuff as a substitute for getting help.
Right.
Right. It's a tool to sort of fine tune your mind, but it still, has these inherent risks to it. So you have to be careful that when you embark on these journeys that you're doing it safely.
Right. It's like anything else. You could learn tennis, but you still need to deal with any psychological issues with a qualified professional. You can learn this, but you still need to work on psychological issues with a professional.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this won't help those.
Totally.
But helping something and healing it aren't the same thing.
Right. And I think the sense here is that as you go and sort of strengthen your mind and become more and more powerful, you want to keep yourself on a track as a person too, with your relationships, with your self-talk, stuff like that. It's not going to be the be all and end. Just like Qigong's not going to fix every problem you've got. You still need to go to the doctor once in a while and get checked out and make sure you're doing okay,
Yeah, it's sort of why you wouldn't have a child meditate, right? Like that, at a certain point, the mind has to reach a certain level of maturity just to be able to deal with what comes up. And so I think that's what he's saying, that, you have to be able to, for example, you have to be able to look at things like sex and attraction and all these other feelings that we, in the West sometimes get muddled up with religious beliefs, and so you have to be able to look at these things kind of from a neutral standpoint because they're in there, and when you're dissolving stuff, it doesn't matter where it came from necessarily, where in therapy it matters, right? Mm-hmm. So you're not trying to figure out why these things exist necessarily. You're just trying to use this tool.
Yeah, and let their energy run its course. That doesn't necessarily explain anything. It's fairly mechanical in nature. Well, moving ahead to another quote about Liu Hongzhi in this article, Taoism and the 5 elements. My teacher, Liu Hongzhi, explained that every human being is composed essentially of 5 elements or 5 phases of energy. Some of those phases of energy are conducive towards people who have extremely carnal appetites, to the point where not just sex, but food and other things are somewhat necessary to fulfill their basic nature. So there's some people who are built for this, whereas other people have different balances of the 5 elements, which make them essentially predisposed toward intellectual pursuits and physical things, but not towards the carnal pleasures of the world. Some people are extremely prone toward literally wanting to deal with psychic nature of things, while some people are not. You have to go what your particular body energy type is. So he's referring to 5 elements here of earth, fire, water, metal, wood, and those each person has a personality style that is reflected more strongly with one of these elements than the other 4.
Yeah, I think on one level that's just saying that, people are inherently different. We have different constitutions, and so how you approach things is going to be different, and you should adjust your meditation practice accordingly. That if you're a, quote, really fiery person, you don't want to do a practice that's going to make you more fiery. You want to do something that's going to balance that out. And so that sort of thing. And
that it's natural for some people to have certain appetites that others don't, and some people find great enjoyment out of things that you have no interest in. It's just,
for sure,
there's no one way to do this stuff.
No, there's a whole lot. There's as many ways to do this as there are people.
Right, but you can break it into you can break people up into 5 sort of vague groups by using that 5 elemental awareness.
It's the same way. Psychology, they break. They have archetypes for personalities, right?
Sure.
This was just this was sort of a precursor to that type of thing, where there were, there are general types of people, and so
and then more specific from there. So he speaks on Master Liu here. Master Liu, for example, only had sex in his life to have children. Because he was a Confucian, he was obligated to produce offspring for his family. But after he'd finished his obligations, he never had sex again in the rest of his life. It's not that he disliked it, he just found the idea of it absolutely uninteresting. But as he had such a powerful mental energy that he was born with, he was an intellectual to the arch degree. He could sit, read, and devour libraries, gaining the same enjoyment a carnal type of person would obtain from sex or food. So that was a pretty funny quote. Just like Master Liu would just absorb and devour libraries with the same gusto that someone would just pig out at a huge meal, or, you know, go after tons of liquor or whatever. To him, he found that enjoyment in the literary pursuits.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of parallels in Western culture of, being people who are just more interested in things that aren't necessarily physical, but have they get the same pleasure from it, right?
Yeah. Well, this is nice because it gives everyone an equal position. I think in our society it's more scattered, where some person's a jock or some person's a nerd or a geek or whatever, a musician. Like, there's not a nice 5-part archetype that you can fit everything into that makes it make sense a little bit. I'm attracted to that orderliness.
And specifically specifically the idea of like the warrior healer type, right? The meditator fighter person, that dichotomy of how can you be in a beating someone's ass and at the same time be peaceful, right? And so that's I think a core sort of thing in the Taoist martial art scene.
Continuing on into chapter 8 on the second swing, do not turn your knees as you pivot. So I think that topic has come up repeatedly when it comes to the swings.
It sure has.
You just can't emphasize enough. You want your knee to be springy. You want it to be light. You don't want it to be crunching down and twisting onto it. So check yourself frequently. Pause your movement, bounce on that leg a little bit. Am I experiencing pain in that knee? Check yourself. Don't overdo it because you think it looks right. I think that lesson just comes again and again.
I mean, that's one of the, we talked a lot about it, I think, in the last episode, about just how the safety precautions you have to take with the second swing are a little more than you have to do with the first swing, because the torque on your knee when you turn in the opposite direction puts pressures on it that you can hurt yourself a little bit easier than you can going the other way. Most people naturally can turn toward their weighted foot a lot easier than turning away from their weighted foot, and this is a big part of why practices like Santi or the single palm change in Bagua are such a big part of the training, because just getting that one piece is such a crucial part. So this type of turning motion that you're doing in the second and third swing is really about how to protect your knees. I mean, and this comes up if you're walking, if you're running, doing any kind of action where you might be having to put pressure on your leg and at the same time sort of push off of it and turn a little bit.
Yeah, the ballistic type of movement.
Yeah, it's a common injury, right? That this sort of twisting injuries. So this is just a way of protecting your joints.
And once you get that second swing going, and you don't overdo it, but over time it'll help build that resilience in your knees and your waist, and it'll help link all those movements. We just keep warning not to overdo it at first. You want to just program the dimensions rather than doing it real hard. You want to do it really correct.
There's without going too deep into it, there's what you do if you're healthy. There's what you do if you're weak but healthy and you just want to get stronger. There's what you do if you're sick and something is like, it needs to be strengthened. And then there's what you do if you're like damaged, right? So if you're damaged, if you have a bad knee or something like that, the way you practice this, if you practice this at all, is very different from the way you practice it if you're healthy. So we're talking about mostly what you do if you're healthy. Right. So that if you don't have any hip or knee or joint problems, you can turn to 45 degrees. If you do have any of those things, then again, you have to change adjust accordingly.
So at this point, you've turned and stepped out with one foot while being planted on the other. So the next direction is to pivot the hip and foot back to the original position. He points out, again, the angle of the ball of the foot, the heel, the knee, the crest of the hip, and the groin must remain perfectly aligned throughout the turn. So all those links in the chain, none of those change or distort. They just stay as one connected piece that you lift up and set down back in a neutral position.
Right. I mean, again, I think I hammered this in, but it's worth repeating that if you take that line down your sort of side channel on the unweighted side, so your arm and your leg and your whole torso on that side are lined up. When you turn to the side, those things are all still lined up, and you don't twist your torso. You also don't do any kind of leaning side to side, where you lift one hip up or drop one shoulder. So this idea, these 4 points, this box that you make with your torso, is that when you turn, that box doesn't break its structure, and that's a lot harder than it sounds.
Yeah. Shift weight 100% and pivot in the other direction. So now that you put your foot down, now you shift onto that one and you open up the hip on the other side. So he cautions that if the weight is only shifted 50% when going to the side, this can easily lead to knee strain. All weight shifts must be 100%. You want to be all the way on one side before you lift the other one up in the air. And when you do lift it, check your balance. Are you throwing yourself off in one way or the other? Figure out what it takes to lightly lift your leg and keep your whole body very stable.
Right. So the reason he says that is if your weight isn't all the way, right? So if you're shifting towards the right, but you're not all the way there, when you kind of jerk yourself to pick that leg up the last little bit, it puts extra pressure on your joints, because you can't, you have to get your foot off the ground somehow. And if your weight's not all the way there, what happens is you kind of throw your shoulders back and you jerk your body, and that picks your foot up, which that's what you don't want to do, right? And so this is working on how to pick up your foot and turn so that if you have to do those kinds of motions, you do them without damaging your joint.
Exactly.
Specifically, mostly your knee joint is
definitely. So, okay, now we move on to the arm swings for the second swing. Now, what the arms do is not so different from the first swing.
As far as the physical movement of it, the first swing and second swing, the arms are exactly the same. The difference is that because of the way you're turning the legs in the second swing gives it a little more torque, a little more momentum, the arms tend to go a little higher. Mm-hmm. Right?
They naturally lift up a little as you go.
The mistake people make is they sort of pull their arms up to try to get them to go higher, which isn't what you want to do. It's just that it's a bigger arc with your legs. So it's like if you just think about swinging a stick back and forth, instead of swinging it from 45 degrees to 45 degrees, now you're swinging it from 90 degrees to 90 degrees. Mm-hmm. And so just that increase of motion speeds everything up, and your arms just kind of swing a little bit faster. And as they swing a little bit faster, they go a little bit higher. And it shouldn't... It's one of those things that it gradually increases as you go, but it's not that you try to put any force into it. Your arms are still just basically hanging there like wet noodles.
Mm-hmm. And just like the first swing, the movement of the legs and the torso gets the arms to do it. And now over time, feel how they strike a little higher. You'll feel it's, he puts it as here, the palm touches the front of the body and the back of the hand touches the back of the body. As your hips loosen and the arc of the hips increase, your hands will swing higher, eventually hitting between the navel and the solar plexus, where the middle internal organs are located.
Yeah.
So you're reaching these higher level of this band of other organs across the middle of your body.
Exactly what I just said, basically. Yeah, that as you speed up, it goes a little bit higher. So now you're targeting those, those middle and upper middle organs. And
so the next teaching is to let the chi from the palms penetrate to the vital organs. By touching very lightly, over time you can tap the body harder, allowing the energy to penetrate deeper and deeper. Under no circumstances hit it with any force or penetration or pain.
Yeah, I mean, this is that, I think we talked a little bit about this with the foot, but there's a certain pressure if you just let your hand sort of drop, from like 4 or 5 inches above your leg, if you just let it drop. Not swing your arm and slap your leg, but just give it up, right? Just take up, your arm is up and you just let it drop. There's a certain amount of pressure when it hits. And so what the swings, in general, but what you're doing is as that thing hits your body and there's that little bit of pressure, you're absorbing that pressure, taking it down to your feet and then springing it back up, right? So there's, and that's what moves your arm back in the other way. So there's this, almost like you're catching a ball with your hip and then swinging it down to your foot, and then it comes back up. The ball is your hand, right? So as your hand sort of swings up and hits your body, you're dropping a little bit. You're sinking onto your weighted leg as your hands are hitting your body. So that pressure is going down in through your leg into the ground and not into your body. And this is the beginning of things like, for example, about how to take blows in martial arts. It's not that you train yourself to be this sort of iron shirt, right? That they can take blows from the outside. This is the method of you become a big squishy ball that can just absorb whatever comes into it and spit it back out. Lee talked about this in in the interview we did that's on our Patreon, where he saw Bruce absorb somebody's hand and the guy couldn't even pull it back out. And it's that kind of squishy softness where the softness becomes hard, if you will, right? That it's so soft that any force that hits it just bounces right off, much like a if you think about a wave, right? That when a really big wave hits you, it doesn't feel soft, but if you can put your hand through it, right? This is that same kind of energy. When you swing your arm, to you it feels soft and squishy, but if somebody were in the way of it, it wouldn't feel soft and squishy to them.
A lot of weight comes behind that arm.
Right, and so it's the same sort of thing with your body where it's soft and squishy, but it has this springiness like I think of a jellyfish or, some sort of amoeba type thing, but something that just, can absorb and squish, but then come back out. Like an octopus is a really good image too.
And I think this second swing is the place where you begin to develop that light movement that contains a lot of heavy weight behind it. And now you become more adroit on your feet with that, so you're able to move more freely than the previous exercises that are all, planted on the feet. This really brings a lighter rising energy into your body as you do these.
Yeah, I mean that goes back to those burners, right? That each burner, in a sense, is also a direction. The lower burner is down, the middle burner is out, and the upper burner is up. And so with each swing, it's like the first swing is definitely everything dropping, going down. The second swing is sort of that sense of going down to make something come up. If you think about how you're swinging your arms, but you're dropping your body a little bit to keep that sort of pung in your body, which even more so in the third swing, but we'll get to that.
So the final piece here on the second swing is to spiraling arms circulate chi. As the arms swing away from the body, let them naturally twist so that the energy goes from the dantian up the spine to the fingertips and out into space away from the body. As the arms come in, energy from the air enters the body through the hands. This is the cultivation of center to periphery and from periphery to center. So he's saying that there's a light twist in the arms as you turn and swing each direction that creates a spiraling and twisting action that's physically drawing energy in or sending it away from you from your palms.
And we talked about spiraling a little bit. This is the passive thing of spiraling, where you're not yet trying to actively do any kind of spiral, but just this motion gets your arm to do a little bit of this twisting, spiraling motion, and over time it trains your body to do it, and then that gets your energy to do it. And so there's this, it's like you suggested almost that, okay, I want my arms to twist as I do this, but it's really the relaxing and just letting your arms not have any tension in them that is all you're doing. That it's like, if you relax your arms and you swing your body, your arms will twist a little bit, but you don't want to put any kind of torque in your arms.
So in a way, it'll uncover itself over time. The more you can let your arms go, the more you'll find that spiraling twist start to inhabit it.
Yeah, and then once it starts happening, you can encourage it, but you don't want to, because if you just sort of force your arm to twist back and forth, chances are you're just going to miss the thing that's happening naturally. So it's, again, it's this thing of the emphasis in all of this stuff is to just let your body be as soft as possible. And soft doesn't mean limp, this is the softness of Tai Chi, not of collapsing your body. So this is the softness of, you still can hold your arm up in the air, but you're just not using any tension to do it. And the second swing, I think, is particularly challenging for a lot of people because they think they can do it. And so you look at it, you go, oh, I can do that. And so there's this tendency to kind of half-ass it, do it okay, and then say, okay, now I'm going to go on to the third swing. And I think that's a big mistake, because there's a lot of stuff in the second swing that's it's very subtle, especially that stuff with the legs that we talked about. But just in terms of the twisting of the arms, it takes a long time to get to where you're getting that rising action of your arm and everything to twist from your shoulder out to your fingertip. So although he kind of brushes past it, that's a very profound little piece of training there to get the arms to spiral.
Exactly. So I wanted to touch on something that to me is an important part of my experience training the second swing with you, is that this is in our martial arts training where it feels like you really find a way to turn your body to swing your arm and hit somebody really hard. Like the previous steps were building up to this, but now when you turn your body and take a step at the same time as you move your arm, and all those are coordinated, I can remember sparring matches where I just lightly turned my body to let my arm just swung off me like as hard as could be. And there's something about that second swing. Like, what would you recommend if someone wanted to transfer using this to martial arts? What would be maybe the first place to try that, or an exercise or a concept?
I mean, I think it's for anyone that wants to do this movement, but it applies to martial arts, which is you get the sense that your arms are in the same position they were in when you're doing the standing, right? So they're at your side. You've got the shoulder blades opened up. You've got your chest down. You've got that little bit of a twist so that your palms face backwards. And you maintain that shape as you turn. And the only thing that really pivots is from your elbow to your fingertip, right? So that your shoulder, your upper arm, Everything else is fairly static, and you just swing that little thing. So that way your arm's not going to swing across your body. Your elbow's not going to swing across your body and close your armpit.
So your arms don't flop across your body. They stay
Right.
sort of open slightly at the shoulders.
And if you maintain that as you turn and you hit something, I'm going to unplug everything.
Yeah, let's just plug the computer off.
When you swing and that thing's intact, it's almost like, it feels like you're swinging a bat or something. And it has this really heavy power to it.
To me, this is that swing that's a backhanded slap or a roundhouse swing of some kind, whereas the third swing is more that uppercut rising as you strike, like Pao Chen in Xingyi. This second swing is more that first palm change where you just turn your body the same direction you're swinging, and it creates just this horizontal type of force.
Yeah, it's a mid-level kind of a strike.
Right, so you could use that backhand, you could use that hammer fist, whatever, it's turning to chop.
And again, it's when you use it in martial arts, you're rarely going to turn, as far as you would in doing the swings. It's much more about being able to just generate a little burst of power in a small space and hit something and come back. So on that level, it that has no particular health benefit. It's more just like, okay, if I want to use this to, for example, if you're golfing or something like that, right? It's that ability to, turn away from your weighted side and not torque your knee. Or if you're any activity, if you're swinging a bat for any reason, right? And so it becomes about just flexibility and stability in your legs and how that transfers to your arm. Think about, if you have a stick or a bat and you're swinging it to hit something, you want your arms intact. You don't want your arms to be too floppy, right? So this is about getting it so you still have that sense of your arm being solid.
Mm-hmm. Structure is there, but there's a whip to it. That's...
Right. It's a soft power. It sounds corny because everybody uses that term, but that's what it is. It's a power that's based on relaxing and letting the body find its natural, alignment rather than a power based on force.
Well, and looking further at this, there's the outward whipping of the second swing. There's also the returning inward hooking swing. So that's where you find yourself, as you pull back from any type of action, you can hit to the body on the way back in. It's where you can slap coming inside. Say you use the back of your hand to slap out, you can create equal force swinging back in, which is a beautiful piece of the second swing. Your returning arm could just be a knockout hit to the kidneys. For close shots especially, it seems like. Turn in.
Yeah, it's the way, and this is a little off topic, but the way it goes is that, your hand should go out and it should do some damage, and then it should come back in and it should do some damage, right? Each time your hand goes out and back should be 2 hits, right? Or at least a block and a hit, right? That the first part of the motion could be a counter and the second could be a hit, or the first part could be a hit and the second could be a counter, but that you have to have, this sense of it doing both, going out and coming back.
It's like you're on your way back before you've completed the out. Your body's already coming back, so it's swinging that arm back in. It becomes really lively. In other words, when you go to chop and hit somebody, your arm is so flexible that when you make contact, you can either retract and go back or swing underneath and around. It just gives you way more flexible options when your arm's going out,
I don't know, somebody once put it as a baseball analogy, but it said when you hit the person, that's only second base. Right? The first time you hit them is second base, right? The home run is when you come back, because either it's that the first hand has pulled their head down and now the second one smashes them in the back of the neck, or it's that the first one is going to hit them again in the opposite direction and then the second one is going to follow through with a double shot. So it's this sort of machine gun aspect where each one is followed by another, followed by another, followed by another.
And you conserve your energy in such a way with this swing that it allows you to come back and forth again and again without resetting. But because your body's doing the swinging back and forth. So once you get it, it makes for a really flexible type of striking.
It's speed bag punching with your whole body, right? So the way, if a boxer will do the thing with the speed bag that, there's the hit and then they have to wait for the thing to come back and hit it again. And there's a certain timing to waiting for it to bounce back and bounce back and bounce back and bounce back. That's the same thing that's happening here. So in the swing, what you're doing is you're training that sensitivity to that bounce, right? So by hitting your own body, right? So you hit yourself, tap yourself in the stomach, that force, you move with it. So you get out of the way of it, absorb it, and then you send it back, which is exactly what you would do if you were, trying to take somebody's arm and pull it to the side and then smack them in the face or something.
Right. So it's not like a lunging punch where you swing away from yourself. It's like your arm goes out, but it's already on its way back to set up a second, third, fourth, just in a figure eight kind of way that it never comes to an end. It's always coming back again to come back out.
Yeah, it's the perpetual sort of windmill type of action.
I mean, just off the top of my head, I can recall doing, circling hands with Kumar one time, and I managed to get a shot up towards his head, and sure enough, he blocked it, and that hand already came around. It slapped me right in the side of the head with that same loop. He had caught my swing and already had it coming back at me before I thought I was about to land it. And that's that loop that the second swing gives you, where it's just recycles itself again and again. So it becomes really efficient. You don't use a lot of energy when you're blocking and striking. It's kind of
nice. I mean that's its whole. In terms of the Neijiaquan of it, right? In terms of that idea of just recycling and continuously being able to strike and absorb and strike and absorb and strike and absorb and strike and absorb is it's like a machine gun versus a musket. If you have to reload every time you hit, it's pretty slow. But if you can hit and then hit and then hit and then hit without having to reload, it just gives you this kind of advantage. All right.
Great speaking with you, man. Glad to see you. It's been a while, bro.
Yeah, it's nice to do it in person. All right, take care. Hey, folks. Isaac again. Just a quick note. If you haven't checked out our interview with Lee Berkins, it's on our Patreon now. And if you have any questions for us, feel free to email us. Let us know things you want to hear about for next season, questions you have about stuff we've talked about in the past, things like that. All right. Again, thanks for listening. Thanks for the support, and take care.